This is Alan Karpick with Brian Neubert and Tom Dienhart. Sunday Conversation. And we are now less than 13 days from Purdue's season opener against the Iowa Hawkeyes in Ross-Ade Stadium. We also will hit a little bit of basketball, too, as basketball opens up on the 14th, which would be Wednesday as well. So I'll start with you, Tom. Obviously, reaction to Jeff Brom's press conference on Saturday afternoon, or late Saturday morning, I should say, and the scrimmage. Give us a couple things that you see or heard that may have captured your attention, and take it from there.
Yeah, Jeff said they ran close to 100 plays in the scrimmage on Saturday. He seemed pleased with the results. Still always work to do, right, guys? They did a lot of situational work on the field, short yardage situations, red zones, third down situations, just running plays in the open field, signaling plays in, just trying to get acclimated to the actual machinations of playing a football game on a Saturday afternoon. So, again, he seemed happy and talked about the quarterback spot. It's still a job that's up for grabs. It's still obviously a three-man race. No shock there. And the two contenders, again, no shock, are Aiden O'Connell and Jack O'Connell. But Jeff did say, guys, that Austin Burton, the UCLA grad transfer, is right on their hip. So keep your eye on the QB spot. That's still getting sorted out. Jeff did say he would be comfortable playing two quarterbacks if he had to. You get the impression that he would not like to do that. But, again, we all know in the past that he's had a willingness to do that. A couple other quick highlights, guys. Rondale Moore is still Rondale Moore. The staff's being very cautious with him, monitoring his reps. They want to get him to game day healthy. And also Lorenzo Neal, the big fifth-year senior defensive tackle, was a participant in Saturday's scrimmage, which was good. Again, Jeff, they got to get him to game day too. They need to get him in better shape as well. But, again, Neal looks like he's getting in shape. It could be a part of this team, a big part of this new defense for Purdue in 2020, guys. So a lot went on as Purdue, as you said, Al, moves closer and closer to that season opening game, October 24th at home against Iowa.
And Brian, when you look at this also and watching this from afar, not afar, but watching this as you observe, it's 13 days. Jeff Brom, I know, mentioned something about, does he think he's going to have this team ready? I'll let Brian start in terms of just the challenges of being a head coach in this environment and trying to make sure things are ready. And then maybe Tom will come back to you because you know what the coach said there as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be there have to be a lot of additional hurdles that go into getting a football team ready to play. I don't know exactly what it looks like. We're not going to know what anything actually looks like until we actually see it on the field, including personnel, what's happening in practice, things like that. But I don't know what all goes into, the simple logistics of a week of preseason practice for college football teams nowadays. The testing obviously is going on, but I don't know what actual practice looks like nowadays. I don't know how much concern there is over keeping guys separate from one another. I don't know if meeting kind of things are disrupted. I don't know if conditioning stuff is disrupted. I don't know if the actual execution of a practice is disrupted. And that's what I've kind of said all along since the start of the pandemic, is so much is going to go into just getting a team to the game this year, probably, that it's really going to be one of the many factors that kind of randomizes results this year, because you don't necessarily know if typical game week preparation is going to get to the same extent that normally it would be, because you have all this other stuff you have to worry about all the time.
Yeah, that's a huge factor. And Tom, you look at Jeff did say in the press conference, about he felt like his team would be ready. I don't know if that's a COVID definition of ready or ready. And yet we've seen teams so far, what we've seen in college football, some sloppy tackling. We've seen that in football in general, and that's not shocking, just because all the lack of rep time, lack of spring practice, lack of preparation over the summer, et cetera. But you take him at his word of being comfortable at this point. Maybe it's because he has to be.
Yeah, I asked him that if he thought he had enough time to get his team ready. if this run-up, if the runway, so to speak, was lengthy enough. And yeah, he thought he was going to have enough time to have his troops ready to go for that season opener. And like you said, guys, and Brian alluded to as well, that great unknown factor of the virus and its impact on these rosters from week to week. Saturday, guys, watching some football games, Virginia Tech was down, I think, 20 guys. Missouri was missing 3 or 4 top wideouts, 3 or 4 top defensive tackles. Every week, some of these rosters really get decimated. So it'll be interesting to see if the Big Ten can march through unabated as far as a virus infection rate goes, but we'll see. It's going to be fascinating moving forward. But again, you got to like the Big Ten's protocols. And again, Jeff felt confident again that he's going to have his team ready to go. And of course, one of those spots, guys, he's going to have in tip-top shape is that offensive line. We all know the importance of the front. We all know the saga of the offensive line since Jeff took over in 2017. It's always seemingly been a work in progress. Talking to Dale Williams Friday, talking to Jeff Saturday. They think they've got 9 or 10 guys that are capable of playing. And it looks like maybe that number one line is starting to take some shape, guys. Grant Herman's a left tackle. Sam Garvin at center. I think you're going to see Cam Craig at left tackle. You know, the right side of the line is probably the one side that's sort of a to-be-continued ordeal. We'll see DJ Washington could be that right guard. Mark Stickford at right tackle, guys. Eric Miller in the UTEP grad transfer. Greg Long look like strong contenders there. Right now, guys, Will Bramwell has been out dealing with an injury. But again, the prospects for this line, I think, are pretty good considering there's just more veteran options up front this year.
And that, just to make sure, you said Cam Craig at left guard?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I meant. Okay.
Oh, guard.
Right. And, yeah. Because
guard. Yeah, that's what Jeff said today. Again, I think we all knew Craig was a heck of a prospect, guys. He played over 70 snaps in the last game of 2019 against Indiana. Did very well. The only true freshman lineman to play last year. No shock to see this guy making a move as a redshirt freshman and potentially into that starting lineup playing left guard next to Grant Herman's.
No, nothing about Hartwig, though, from that standpoint.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, Alan. Gus Hartwig, Jeff Brom was effusive in his praise for the true freshman. He called Gus Hartwig the most impressive lineman that they've had come in to campus since he's been on campus. Jeff Brom is the head coach. So Gus continues to turn heads, guys. Again, Dale Williams said it as well. Jeff Brom reiterated it Saturday. Gus is going to be part of the rotation of this offensive line. If not at center, at guard. Again, this is an advanced prospect who has a chance, again, to have a long and very successful career in that Boilermaker offensive line, beginning as a true freshman in 2020.
Jackson Anthrop's injury, Brian, obviously became public today in terms of his broken clavicle, may be out for a period of time, and maybe could get back, having had it'll be interesting to see if he can get back. There's obviously an 8-week season. He's got 10 weeks left, 11 weeks from now. Those injuries usually take 6 to 8 weeks, so it's possible. But talk about the dynamics of that. I mean, obviously there's a lot of talent at wide receiver. That is true, but Jackson Anthrop is a known quantity as a fifth-year guy.
Yeah, but he needed to catch the ball better this year than he did last year. He had a lot of very uncharacteristic drops. You know, part of the value of Jackson Anthrop is reliability, and he struggled in that area a little bit last year for whatever reason, because he's a guy you absolutely positively trust to do that more often than not. I think it would be a bigger deal, obviously, had Rondell Moore not come back, but Rondell Moore is going to log as many snaps, I'm quite certain, as Purdue can get out of him. You know, last year, I think Purdue was probably ready to play TJ Sheffield as well in the slot, and that didn't work out because of injury, like so many others. And Purdue's got talent there. What they don't necessarily have is tremendous experience, and that's part of where you're probably going to miss Jackson Anthrop. I think from a leadership perspective, Jackson Anthrop's probably one of your guys that you would like to have, a productive leader, a good teammate, kind of things like that, a guy you trust. But I think Purdue's got more than enough talent at wide receiver to get by. So it's just a matter of keeping Rondell Moore in the games, getting TJ Sheffield up to speed, whoever else may factor into that mix in the slot, whether it's another of the freshmen, whether it's Ahmad Anderson, perhaps moving into the slot some. I don't know if that's on his radar at all, but Purdue's got plenty of options there nonetheless.
Tom, last question about football, just on looking ahead. A little challenging. I mean, we've had good access to talk to these guys, but you can only get a feel over a Zoom interview, and it's a challenge to do that, certainly. What do you see? What's important in the next 2 weeks for Purdue? I mean, is it as simple as naming the quarterback? Do you see that in the cards? What are you going to be looking for as you wind things down to that season opener against Iowa?
Yeah, I think that quarterback situation will take care of itself. Plenty of good options there. Again, all capable options. To me, on the offensive side of the ball, it gets back to that offensive line coming together and gelling. We all know, guys, that run game has got to be better. They have to manufacture a run game. They have to either be physical up front to get a push to allow the King DeRues of the world and Xander Horvath of the world to get yards consistently, especially guys in the red zone, short yardage situations, and in that late game situation where you're trying to kill the clock with the lead by running the football. Defensively, I just think overall, right, with a new coordinator, a new scheme, Bob Diaco, if there's one spot, it's going to be the linebacking core that I'll be watching. Everybody's eager to see this defense. Jeff talked about it Saturday too, reiterated a lot of the points we've made for months. Elimination of big plays, getting off the field on third down, generating turnovers, all big keys to success for a defense that has a lot on its plate and is going to have to make some big strides, I think, if Purdue wants to reach the goals that it has for itself this fall.
Yeah. All right, Brian, we'll switch gears to basketball. Obviously, a big week because it's the start of official practice on Wednesday. You've talked and written extensively about some of the questions about this team. Yet there's a lot of things that are really going to be fun to watch. And you mentioned on Golden Black Live on Friday, just the ones that you guys that you're really going to be watching as much as any is going to be that guard tandem, the freshman guard tandem of Jaden Ivey and Ethan Morton. When you have that first chance for question and answers, what are some of the things you're going to be asking as you get through that first practice?
Well, I think the guards to a man have to, take a huge step forward this year. For as much as we talked about Jaden Ivey and Ethan Morton for good reason, because I think those are guys under a lot of circumstances who'd walk in and be starters from day one. I think they're both good enough to do that. The guys they're coming in behind are the ones who really are gonna loom large in all of this too, because Eric Hunter, Sasha Stefanovic, and Isaiah Thompson are all guys who did enough positive things last year to suggest that they can be really significant parts of the solution here. But they also had enough inconsistency about them and enough just sort of immaturity about them from a basketball perspective that's where the upside kind of lies. If those guys are more aggressive, if they're more confident, if they're more decisive in what they do, I think that will go a long way in solving some of Purdue's offensive problems from last year. But also I think that'll translate to the defensive end, where Purdue's questions are pretty considerable, because they're going to try to be good on defense with a roster full of guys who are, to put it nicely and politely, less than proven as individual defenders. That's a big part of it, but also Travion Williams is a big part of it. He's Purdue's best player. He's their best chance. How consistent does he become? How many minutes can he carry? How is his conditioning? Does he carry himself like Purdue's best player? Does he carry himself like a first-team All Big Ten caliber player? When he gets a little dude on his back in the post, does he look to pass first, or does he attack that guy and kill him like he ought to? How does he come along at the foul line? I think it's reasonable to assume that sometimes maybe that might have affected the way he played a little bit, because maybe he would have been a little bit leery of going to the foul line, considering his struggles there. Travion Williams is the most important piece of the puzzle for Purdue by a fairly wide margin. I'm saying that before we know what Jaden Ivey and Ethan Morton can do, but I think it legitimately is one of those situations where Purdue only goes as far as Travion Williams can take it, because so much is invested in him and he matters so much in so many different areas of the game. You don't know now who his backup is, how ready his backup is going to be. That's a first for Purdue in a long time. It's been years since Purdue hasn't had two really good centers or really proven centers. Zach Edey might be that guy right away. Emmanuel Dewona might come along, but you don't know at this point. And every year for the last 5 or 6, you've known exactly who your other center is. So that puts another layer of onus on Travion Williams as well. So kind of long story short, Purdue's got a lot of questions going into this start of practice.
Yeah, Brian, you mentioned Zach Edey. You know, we hear so much about the other newcomers for Purdue basketball. You talked about Morton Ivy, the redshirts, Newman, Gillis, and you wrote about Zach Edey this week. And he's a player that you think really could play a significant role this fall as a 7'3" true freshman. Again, you didn't want to get everybody's expectations over the top with Edey, but again, he was a guy that, from your early reports and reporting, again, is a freshman big man who could play a decent role for this team.
Yeah. Ready is relative, though. It is relative to the circumstances. And Purdue does not have a proven backup center. How ready Zach Edey is really isn't revealed by how pleasant a surprise he's maybe been early on. So I don't want to make it sound like he's going to walk in the door and be Shaquille O'Neal here. But I think the best case scenario here is he's perhaps surprisingly ready to be a guy who can give you some pretty good minutes in a reserve role. We don't know. I mean, he has very little body of work playing basketball at a very high level because he didn't play a whole lot at IMG Academy. He hasn't played very long. And you're really only judging him on what he's doing in workouts. And that tells you only a fraction of the story. So I am relying on what people tell me. And they are all very, very pleasantly surprised by how far he's come in a very short period of time. That is certainly positive, but that isn't any sort of indication that he's going to be a freshman All Big Ten team member or anything like that. I try to keep myself out of positions where I can only go on what people tell me. That's why I fly to Atlanta every summer to go see recruits myself. That's why I try to go to practices in the summer and whatnot, because I want to see it for myself instead of taking somebody's word for it. But in COVID world, we're just kind of taking everybody's word for it here. So that's a very small price to pay. But I can't personally vouch for Zach Edey myself. But everybody I've talked to about him says he's been a very, very pleasant surprise this summer, which has been a very positive development because that position obviously is a huge question mark.
All right. Talking about speaking for yourself, you get Tom, your parting shot or anything that's specific for this week. We've kind of hit obviously about what we're talking about football, but give a quick 30-second wrap, and then I'll come to you, Brian, and we'll wrap this show up.
Yeah, Purdue will continue training camp this week, fellas. We'll talk to the cornerbacks. We'll talk to the defensive linemen. We'll talk to the running backs and the special teamers this week. And on the note of defensive backs, cornerbacks in particular, guys, one more quick note from Saturday's scrimmage. I asked Jeff about the status of DJ Johnson, the Iowa transfer cornerback. He said the NCAA has rubber stamped the waiver, but they're still waiting on clearance from the Big Ten. So again, Jeff doesn't think that's going to be a big hurdle. And again, getting that 6'1" DJ Johnson in that secondary would be a nice boost to the depth and overall production of that unit.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, from a coverage perspective, as far as I'm concerned, it's basketball season now too. So I have 5 more of these little preseason breakdowns: Manuel Duona, Zach Edey, Jaden Ivey, Ethan Morton, and then the 2 redshirts. 6 more, my bad. The other day I talked to Micah Shrewsbury about Purdue's offense and Steve Lutz about Purdue's defense. Got a lot of good insight from those guys. Practice starts Wednesday, officially anyway. It's kind of only ceremonial these days because they've been practicing for some time, but intend to have a lot of basketball stuff all week. Got a couple of basketball recruiting updates from a thing I went to last weekend and was too lazy to transcribe last week. Have a football recruiting update on a top Purdue 2022 target, Landon Livingston, that I talked to again a week and a half ago, but was too lazy to transcribe last week. So my foot's to the fire on those finally. Friday night, I'm going to go see Omar Cooper play the 2022 Purdue wide receiver target in a game against Pike, which has 2021 Purdue offensive line commitment, Mohamed Musa. So it will be a busy week.
All right, guys. I want to thank our sponsors. Yeah, sponsor, and that should be the Purdue Union Club Hotel And it is important to know that they are going to have watch parties for each of the home football games. So you can click on there's information on that on our website as well, on the message boards. And make sure you do that if you have interest in attending those. And Brian and Tom, have a good rest of your Sunday, and we'll look forward to more. It's amazing these seasons are converging more than they ever have, and it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But guys, have a good rest of the weekend, and to all of you, thanks for listening and watching our Sunday conversation. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.